Hey everybody, Trey here. Welcome back to another forecast discussion. Another day, another severe threat for Texas, including the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. SPC has put out an enhanced risk level 3 out of 5 for basically the Metroplex south and southwestward through the entire I-35 corridor, Waco, Austin, down to San Antonio, and even down to the Texas-Mexico border near Laredo. Anywhere in there, you have an enhanced risk for severe storms surrounded by a large slight and marginal risk area. All hazards on the table for today. The greatest threat is going to be severe hail. This is the hail outlook today. There is a 30% hatched area that does include the DFW Metroplex southward toward Waco, Austin, down to San Antonio, areas just to the west of there as well. That is where the greatest threat lies for large to significant hail, perhaps above 3 inches in diameter. So some large stones today may fall from these supercells. Damaging winds also going to be a threat once storms congeal into more of a line later on. Again, same areas at play for that. We also have a tornado threat. There is a 5%, including the DFW Metroplex down toward Waco and cutting off just at the Austin area. So places like Dallas, Waco, Round Rock, Georgetown, Temple, Killeen, under the gun for the greatest tornado threat today, although again, the biggest threat with these storms is going to be large hail and eventually damaging winds, but a few tornadoes are possible today with this activity. Let's go ahead and get started. This is our water vapor satellite imagery, and not a whole lot going on across the country except for this little swirl we have going on here. This little swirl you see impinging into the southern plains, that is our trough that is taking shape today. It's not going to be one of these troughs that starts out over on the west coast and it comes in, digs out into the west coast, and then moves off nicely into the southern plains. No, it's actually, what's actually going on right now is it's amplifying as we speak. Let's go to the upper air map. This is at 500 millibars, and this is just a big trough here that really stretches all the way from the western portion of the country all the way out to the east with some embedded shortwaves in here as we speak. And this is going to be our main player for our severe threat today. This kink in the flow, this shortwave trough within the main long wave, is going to take on a little bit more of a neutral tilt. You can see it starting off pretty positively tilted at this point. Going to take on a little bit more of a neutrally tilted configuration as we go through the afternoon today, and is going to amplify just a bit with some stronger flow reaching the northern to central Texas vicinity, and that is why we're going to see a little bit of an enhancement of shear throughout the day in the deep layer, and therefore a severe threat with these storms that form in the exit region of this trough. Not much of a low-level response yet. We do have some semblance of low-level jet here. This is all on the backside of the cold front that is sagging down. Going to be a major player in today's event. I'll talk about that in just a second. A little bit of a plume of low-level jet here out of the southwest across central Texas at the moment. Not going to be much in the way of a low-level response as we go throughout the day. That low-level jet is going to wane somewhat as we go into the afternoon, and therefore low-level shear may be a little bit on the weak side, except near the surface low, which is going to set up somewhere in the central Texas vicinity. In fact, here is our current surface analysis right now. Our surface low sits right here down in west or southwest Texas right now. It's going to meander just a tad to the northeast or east as we go through the day today, and that will at least help a little bit in strengthening the low-level wind fields, especially right out ahead of it and along the warm front out ahead of this surface low. Interesting surface map as we look at it this morning. This is the current surface data. First thing you notice right away is that the moisture is a little bit on the weak side as far as severe weather goes. You see our 60s dew points pretty much confined to south central Texas, 60 dew point there in Austin, but it's really confined to areas south of there. Best dew points upper 60s and 70s down in far south Texas, McAllen, Brownsville, Corpus Christi, with some adequate but slightly weaker dew points just to the north of there, low to mid 60s there, reaching up to the Georgetown area at the moment. So this is going to be a case of what we call just-in-time moisture return. We haven't had a lot of time for this moisture to return after our event just a couple days ago across Texas. That cold front came in, kind of swept dew points out a little bit. We are going to see moisture, though, return up into this region. We should get 60s dew points. Given the proximity here, Austin, Georgetown at the moment, we should get 60s dew points up to near the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex ahead of that surface low as we go into the afternoon today, given that winds are going to strengthen probably just a little bit here at the surface and back just ahead of that surface low. We can also take a look at our surface low. The surface low is setting up somewhere, it looks to be somewhere in this vicinity right there. We saw it on our SPC mesoanalysis page. You see the counterclockwise flow right in that southwest Texas vicinity. And we have a cold front that is surging southward at the moment. A little bit hard to pinpoint on the surface data as we don't really see a well-defined wind shift in here. We do have these strong 25 to 30 knot surface winds here up in the northern Texas panhandle into southwest Kansas. So I believe the cold front is right in this vicinity right now. That cold front will continue to sag southeastward as we go through the day today, and that will really be the impetus for storm initiation this afternoon ahead of the surface low. It will come in and kind of merge with the dry line that is going to set up here across Texas as that moisture surges northward. So as it overtakes the dry line, we should see rapid storm growth, strong forcing for ascent along that dry line cold front intersection, or composite dry line and cold front. Should be enough to fire quite a few storms this afternoon. So therefore, given a lot of forcing, we may see a little bit more of a quick transition to a more messy or linear storm mode. We'll talk about that a little bit in a second as we go into some model data. Here is some sounding data from this morning. This is Dallas-Fort Worth, again, well north of the warm front, well north of the best moisture at the moment. So this is not going to be totally representative of what we're going to see later on today. We don't have a whole lot of moisture to speak of in the low levels of the profile, fairly dry there. And so we'll have to go southward to see if that is the case in our warm sector. Let's go down to Corpus Christi this morning. You do see we have a moist layer. Again, the red profile is our temperature profile that the weather balloon sees as it goes up in the atmosphere. Green profile is our dew point, or moisture, as we go up in the atmosphere. We want those to be close together, fairly high up in the atmosphere. That's not really the case today. We do have some semblance of moisture, or of a moist layer there near the surface and just above it, but it's not that steep. It's very shallow. It doesn't even extend up to 850 millibars. So fairly shallow moisture in this moist plume down to the south. So that may be a little bit of a limiting factor today. That may introduce a little bit of dry air into these storms. That could increase outflow production and keep the overall tornado threat at bay just a tad, give it a little bit drier mid and upper levels of the atmosphere. We do already have quite a bit of instability here down to the south. 1,100 joules per kilogram of mixed layer CAPE here at Corpus Christi at 12Z. Profile is favorable for supercells. We do have about 38 knots of effective bulk shear already in play. That should strengthen a little bit as we go into the afternoon. So long photographs definitely favorable for severe weather and supercells. Low-level shear, again, is what is going to be the issue. Low-level winds are pretty much on the weak side today. You do see a little bit here north of the front, a little bit of curvature there in the low levels of the photograph, but you see 850 millibar winds, really only about 15 to 20 knots. That's fairly weak. We want to see for tornadoes, we want to see that low-level jet really robust to really enlarge those low-level photographs and create a tornado threat. That's not going to be really the case today. And we'll take a look at some forecast soundings here in a second. All right, let's look at some NAM data. This is the fresh 12Z NAM coming in hot off the press. So here's our trough. Again, a unique situation that we don't have a trough already maturing here off the west coast, moving into the plains. We have this flow, strong flow around on the backside of the shortwave here, very positively tilted shortwave. Again, but it's going to take on a little bit more of an amplified configuration, a little bit more of a neutrally tilted configuration, although by storm time it still will be quite positively tilted. So that's why we're not seeing a robust low-level response here. If we had a nice negatively tilted trough, that increases our chances of a much better low-level response, much stronger low-level flow, tighter surface low. Not going to be the case today. That's why low-level shear is going to remain a little bit weak, but we still should have enough large-scale ascent coupled with that more mesoscale ascent along the cold front and dry line for storms today in north central and central Texas. You can see some stronger flow here in the exit region of this trough, some 50, 60 knot flow there in the exit region of the trough. So that's why deep layer shear will be favorable for supercells, but low level shear is an issue for today's event. So that continues to amplify throughout the afternoon, and eventually it will dig down into really the Gulf Coast region, provide a marginal severe threat out in the southeast for tomorrow. Let's go down to 850 millibars, show you that low-level jet throughout the day. You'll see that it doesn't do a whole lot. We see just a little plume of stronger low-level jet there ahead of that slight closed contour there in west central Texas. But again, it pretty much wanes throughout the day as that cold front pushes through. So will the stronger low-level shear And really, the cold front and dry line will be the western extent of the severe threat for today. Once the cold front passes your severe threat will pretty much be over. Perhaps maybe some elevated convection north of the warm front that continues. But overall, the more robust severe threat will end once the cold front passes your location. So let's go down to the surface and take a look at that cold front. I'm going to zoom in to our southern plains sector. And so we start off nice surface low here in west central Texas. That meanders off to the east and southeast today. You can see it gets shunted pretty quickly off to the south and east because of that cold front. You see the boundary between the temperatures there. This is at 4 p.m. Central Daylight Time. Here's our wind shift. You can see the temperatures there to the north very cold as well, 50s and 60s, 70s and 80s to the south. So that cold front's going to come in pretty quickly, and we should see fairly early initiation today as well, probably 1 to 2, maybe 3 p.m. So an early round of storms once again, early initiation of storms once again, as that cold front has been a little bit faster than what models are showing. Some previous models were showing this cold front well back by this point today. Not the case. It is surging pretty quickly. That cold air always seems to win out. And so we are going to see that cold front move through pretty quickly. 4 p.m. By about 4 or 5 p.m., maybe 6 p.m., it's through the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And then again, that will signify the end of the severe threat once it passes your location. So cold front continues to sag into the evening hours, and once given the strong forcing and the progressive nature of this cold front, we should see a fairly quick transition to a linear storm mode, and therefore the damaging wind threat will take over right away. Some supercells initially, at least. Let's take a look at the dew points here. So this is going to be at 18Z. We do see that dry line tries to set up. Tough to say. I believe the actual dry line might be out in here. We have a very sharp moisture gradient here as well, so a little bit tough to say. Not going to matter for this exercise. We're going to take a look at the shear vectors with respect to the initiating boundary. So that dry line, so you do see initially the shear vectors are quite perpendicular to that dry line. As the cold front comes in, though, the forcing may overcome that favorable shear vector orientation with respect to the initiating boundary and produce a more linear mode. But at least initially, maybe a 1 to 2 hour window of discrete supercells during which there will be that significant hail threat given a more semi-discrete mode. We'll take a look at the model, the convective allowing model here in a second. But overall, things should eventually congeal into more of a line. You see that Cape axis shunted southward as the cold front comes through. And as the cold front comes through, it's going to be oriented something like this. Those shear vectors much more parallel to that boundary, that cold front, and therefore a quick transition to a linear mode will ensue, probably within the first 2 to 3 hours of storm formation. So again, that 1 to 2 hour window of discrete or semi-discrete supercells, probably just near and south of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex is going to be very close today for you. I know the other day, a couple days ago, there was that big tornado threat and large hail threat for you, ended up shifting southward. And we saw pretty much nothing happen in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. But that may or may not be the case today. We're just going to have to see. Some models are showing a threat for Dallas-Fort Worth, and definitely the threat from the SPC does include the DFW Metroplex, the entire DFW Metroplex, but given the progression of the cold front, the severe threat may be at least short-lived, perhaps a little bit weaker for you, depending on the timing of that cold front when and where storms fire. I have an inkling that it may be just south of the DFW Metroplex, but it's too close to call. If you're in the DFW Metroplex today, definitely keep those cars in the garage and be ready for a potential tornado threat, as the discrete storm formation will be the greatest threat for severe discrete storms will be up to the north here on that northern edge of that dry line and cold front, just to the northeast of the surface low, which does include the DFW Metroplex. So again, keep an eye out today for the DFW Metroplex. But I think the severe threat may be short-lived there, maybe just to the south, but again, too close for comfort. Here's a forecast sounding from 4 p.m. Central Daylight Time from just southwest of the DFW Metroplex. Here's Dallas, where that cursor is. We're looking just down here. And some interesting things to note with this forecast sounding from the NAM. It does not really erode that cap at all here across the region. Again, the NAM is always way too cool. The surface, 73 degrees, will be exceeded pretty efficiently today. We should get up into the upper 70s at least, probably into the low 80s here. So cap erosion should be a little bit better, especially as that trough moves in as well. But the cold front is going to be the main initiating boundary for storms here. And our hodograph does look favorable for severe weather. We do have some curvature there in the low levels, some veering of those low-level winds with height, although they are fairly weak low-level winds. Still some veering there in the lowest levels, some clockwise curvature, that hodograph. Amid a supercell wind profile, long hodographs there, that is favorable for a few tornadoes and some large hail. Decent instability there, up to about 1,400 joules per kilogram of mixed layer CAPE. I think that is on the weak side. Again, I don't really know if I buy this thermodynamic profile at all. Let's go ahead and look at the wrap real quick, just to see. You do see the setup for that triple point, that area where that moisture arcs back in, is just a little bit southwest of DFW. So that's why I think maybe just southwest of the Metroplex, maybe under the gun. The Metroplex itself a little bit questionable at this point. So there's some convection ongoing there. Let's try to get out of that convective contamination there, as this is not a super representative sounding given all that upward motion modeled by the sounding here. So this is a little bit better. So this is going to be a forecast sounding from the wrap model. You do see a little bit of that capping inversion remaining, but that strong forcing from the cold front will push parcels through that, through any remaining cap, and allow them to breach that cap and rise pretty efficiently, become storms. You see fairly large instability here, but 2,300 joules per kilogram of mixed layer CAPE. That's much better than what the NAM was showing. Low-level shear, again, on the weaker side here, so mostly going to be a large hail threat, given strong instability with weaker low-level shear and a supercell wind profile for those first 1 to 2 hours of storm formation. Should foster a large to giant hail threat. You see some of the analogs here on the severe hail, the sounding analog system. Some really significant analogs there, including a 5-inch one there at the top of the list. So significant hail is a likelihood today with those initial supercells before the damaging wind threat takes over. Strong deep layer shear for supercells as well. A tornado or two, especially near that warm front, it's a little bit tough to say how that tornado threat is going to take place. Let's take it right on that frontal zone there and see if we can get an uncontaminated sounding there from on the frontal zone where that low-level shear will be most enhanced. And that may give us a better tornado threat right on the front. A little bit of contamination here, but you do see a little bit better curvature, a little bit better, more favorable hodographs for tornadoes, a little bit more low-level shear and veering of those low-level winds with height. So right on that front, I think is going to be your best bet for a few tornadoes. But again, large hail looks to be the main threat with these storms, given strong instability and a fairly weak low-level shear profile with those supercells. Let's take a look at some high-resolution data from the HRRR. This is, again, a sample, an estimation of what the radar might see later on today. And so we start off here, that cold front sags southward. We get storm initiation here right about 19Z, 2 p.m. Central Daylight Time there, just southwest of the DFW Metroplex. And we see storms rapidly become severe, move off to the east. You do see some semi-discrete cores in here, so these will be supercells capable of producing significant hail and damaging winds, maybe a tornado or two. Again, the low-level shear may be a little bit weaker, perhaps right along the warm frontal boundary ahead of that surface low, maybe just enough enhancement in low-level shear for a tornado or two. But again, I think the greatest threat is going to be for large hail and damaging winds. And then pretty quickly, you see that 1 to 2 hour window before things really start to congeal into a line. We get additional development here down to the south along the I-35 corridor, Waco down to Austin, and things pretty quickly congeal into a squall line moving into southeast Texas, going into the late afternoon to evening hours. So places like Houston and Galveston may see some rumble of thunder and some severe reports down to Corpus Christi, and then eventually down into far southeast Texas by this evening, and then things will clear out into the overnight hours as it moves into the Gulf. So pretty interesting setup. We do see, again, that couple-hour window for semi-discrete storms there just southwest of the metro. And again, this particular model does have the storms just on the southwest side of the metro, saving the DFW Metroplex from the brunt of the large hail and damaging winds. But again, too close for comfort. All of DFW needs to be on alert for these initial supercells morphing into more of a squall line going into the afternoon. Maybe some elevated storms as well north of the best moisture here toward the Red River. Perhaps some sporadic hail with these as well. So folks from the Red River southward to the DFW Metroplex may definitely need to be on alert for some severe hail today with those storms. So that's going to do it for this video. Once again, an enhanced risk level 3 out of 5 for the entire I-35 corridor from Dallas-Fort Worth, the entire Metroplex under the gun today, down toward Waco, Austin, San Antonio, and then even down toward the Texas-Mexico border northwest of Laredo. Slight risk surrounds that, level 2 out of 5. Houston, Galveston, Victoria, Corpus Christi, down toward Brownsville and McAllen. Marginal risk surrounds that as well. Again, everybody in the DFW Metroplex needs to be on alert today for significant severe weather. That does include the potential for a few tornadoes and some significant to giant hail, 3 to 4 inches maybe in diameter. Again, I have an inkling it may be just southwest of you, so places like Cleburne, down toward Waco may see the brunt of the large hail, but DFW Metroplex needs to be on alert for severe weather today. And then the damaging wind threat will ensue later on. Here again is our hail outlook. Does include everybody there from the Red River southwestward to the Mexico-Texas border, from Del Rio to Laredo, San Antonio, Austin, Waco, DFW, all under the gun for significant hail with these storms today. Damaging winds, more of a threat as storms congeal into a line this afternoon into evening. That I-35 corridor, those same places we mentioned there. And then the tornado threat. Greatest tornado threat will be up to the north across Dallas-Fort Worth, Waco down to Austin, 5% area there for a few tornadoes. And then a few spin-ups in the line are possible as it moves to the southeast. That 2% area stretches all the way down to southeast Texas as well. So that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.